side. So Jacob saying hi. Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello. Nice to see you all. Hello. We'll just wait and see who else comes in. A lot of people signed up for today. I don't know how many will turn up. It really varies. Hi, Bun Bun Butt. Hi, Cinders. Hello. And hi. Hello. Nice to see you all. We'll just wait for a few minutes, see who else is coming in. Paris says hello to everybody. Titsub says hello to everybody. Cosmic says hello. Stream is live, but my bath is calling. What a cheek. Katsumi says hello, everybody. Barb says hiya. Mark says hello, everyone. Little Ciel says good evening. Missed a few weeks. Nice to be here this evening. Welcome back. And Crayola says hiya, hiya. Jacob, what's been happening in the UK aside from Queen's 70th and PM surviving the no confidence vote? I mean, I think they're pretty drastic anyway. I just think they're fairly major, those things that have happened. But that's kind of been it in the UK. Cosmic.
I went to a Jubilee celebration last weekend. Dull.
Was it dull? Yeah, it's quite a difficult one, isn't it? I didn't go. I watched some of the celebrations on TV, but I didn't go.
I thought it'd be a good place to meet some of my neighbours. And in fact, I did meet some of the neighbours. I met the royalist flag waving ones.
Maybe not the neighbours you wanted to meet. I don't know. Cosmic says, I know, but it's tough now. I'm working full time again. Oh. Master Jim says, good evening from Cornwall. Cool Mint Cream says, greetings from Old Road Island. Ropes and Iron says, hey all. Damien says, hello from the Netherlands. But this is so cool, isn't it? Isabella says, hello from me in Scuderia. Is it Scuderia? I want to get that right. Greetings from California. Hi, Lady Diane. Welcome. Explorer, good evening, everyone. I don't know why I did that shit accent. Let's ignore me, shall we? It looked entertaining on the TV in Australia, Jacob. It was really cool. Explorer says hello. Buntu says from Singapore. That's amazing. Oh, has Karis got something wrong with her eye? I'm not looking clearly. I hope she's all right. Oh gosh, you've got a patch. What have you done, woman? Too much hardcore play. Hey, spunk in the eye, probably. I know none of this are true, and thank God she's laughing, and I do know her. Otherwise, I would not cross that line. Let me point that out. Cataract. Oh, that's a really boring explanation. Instead, can you go in tomorrow, wherever you're going, and say, too much spunk in my eye? I think that will go down a lot better. And close enough, I'm not the diehard F1 fan. Yeah, I get that. Thanks. And I hope you feel better soon. So people are saying nice and cosmopolite. Get that right. Remember that now. It says hi from Washington, DC. Isn't that cool? So cool. Right. So, the wrong kind. Oh, what is the wrong kind of spunk? Maybe it was 3 days old. It was an eye wash or something. Let's not go there. I'm stopping now. I'm stopping. I'm going too far. This is bad. Let's go through the rules. Don't be rude. Oh dear. Let's go through the rules. Please, no nakedness, no nudity. We are talking about things that are mental health based, and we are talking about things that are kink based, and we're talking about things that are poly based. So just the wrong place. I don't mind if you're wearing clothes. I don't mind if you're fully dressed up to the nines. Wanking, waving only allowed at the end when we kind of do that. That's very true, Jacob. Thank you, and hello to anyone who's new, who's never come before. Not in Karis's eye. You know, so thank you. If you've never seen me before, what I ask is that you write down the side rather than talk. Jerry is the host, so he can look at what's going on. We've had 3 or 4 actual wankers in. I'm afraid people do wank. I mean, why? It's just not that exciting. It completely confuses me. And apparently there was only one a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, just crazy. We had one last week, didn't we, Jerry? Jerry sorted them out, 2 weeks ago, very quietly, chucked them out. I mean, there's a time and place for exhibitionism. I agree with you, Kitten Luna. However, this is not it. Please be responsible for yourselves, your well-being, your safety, your okayness. Please don't record. And I'm sure you've got lovely bits, as I keep saying to everybody, I just don't want to see them here. This is a respectful place. Also, please don't comment. We don't know what's going on for people in their mental health. Funny enough, their neurodiversity, which is a little bit what we're going to talk about today, or anything else. So this isn't a place to say, I mean, you've just seen the way I banter with Karis. I know Karis, I've met Karis, I know Jerry, I know a few people here. If these people are strangers to you, it isn't okay to say, oh, hey, Jerry, show us your cock, or you look attractive. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, Jerry will, no, he won't, he's kidding. But it's not the appropriate time and space for that. So please, can we be there? Can we? Of course we can, Jacob. We'll come on to that in a minute. Cool mint cream, my bits are not all that lovely. I bet they are. We've all got lovely bits for different reasons at different times in different ways. We really have. So of course we can comment. So first of all, I guess what I want to start with is kind of, what does neurodiversity mean even? Because I think actually what people don't get is that the words themselves are misused often. We don't use them correctly. We don't understand, how do we pronounce, what do we say, what's appropriate. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is, if you meet anyone who is neurodiverse, not has neurodiversity, something to think about already, that person may want you to say, are you on the spectrum? Do you have, okay, so are you neurodevelopmental conditions, disabilities? It's all very personal. The way it is at the moment, it's mainly about neurodiversity and neurodiverse and neurotypical. So I'll come on to that. However, if I were to ask Jacob, how do you like to be called? It's the same as gender. It's about respect. It's the same as sexuality. It's about respect. Tell me more about you and what you want to be called. So like, if you were talking to me, I'm a she. I want to be known as a she. I think if I was diagnosed with anything, and I haven't been diagnosed with anything, I probably would have ADHD. I think in my 20s, I could have had a UPD. So people can be diagnosed and also very, very highly function and be okay. It wouldn't surprise me if I got diagnosed with ADHD, because of all the things I do to overcome being the sort of person that I am. And so you've got to ask the person, what does somebody want to be called, and what does that mean? But for some people, what we're talking about here is brain variations, brain challenges. So e.g., Jacob says ADHD, specific learning disability, ASD, intellectual development disability. DSM has a whole chapter for neurodevelopmental conditions. Yes, and there are, and I'm going to cover that a little bit as well, because there are also attained or so people also have brain injuries, which also causes neurodiversity, which doesn't mean that it's developmental at all. So you would have to be considerate and aware of that as well. So I work with a couple of people who have had serious brain injuries or impact maybe from an illness that's impacted their brain, therefore they have become neurodiverse. So that leaves that out, and it's really important that we keep that in as well. So that's important as well. So it depends. It's all about environment when it comes to neurodiversity. For some people, they will absolutely thrive. And for those that are in a different chapter, degenerative acquired neuroconditions. Yeah, okay. So I'm just saying for here, it's really important that I keep it in. And it's really important to me that I say that that's all really important as well. So in the right environment, somebody who's neurodiverse might utterly thrive. Somebody might also really not thrive and not be well. So I'll talk about spiking as well a little bit in a minute. So there are words that are used around neurodiversity. So some people say neurominority. Some people say neurodivergent. Some people say neurodistinct. Some people call ADHD can be a superpower. Yes, exactly. And that's one of the things. So neurotypical is a kind of what we expect everybody to be. I think that's an unfair statement, because I kind of love the fact that we're all different. However, that's what it is. So when we look at neurodivergence, it can be absolutely crippling, Isabella, you're right. So that's what I'm saying by spiking. We'll have a look at that in a minute. So we're talking about things like you said, ADHD, autism. We're also talking about dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette's we're talking about. You can also cover things that cover acute brain injury. You were just saying as well, anything degenerative or an acquired condition. It can include any form of intellectual form of disability, and it can also include mental health conditions. Now, some people say, no, it can't, that's not fair. So I think what you have to do again is ask the person. Some people really have just latched onto the fact that neurodiverse is mainly and only specifically autism spectrum disorder. It's that. So it's anyone who's on the spectrum. Again, words that are used, not used so much nowadays, things like actual just spectrum, or people using words along the lines of Asperger's, for example. So some people may have been diagnosed with Asperger's years ago and hold on to that, and that's their diagnoses, and it's not really used anymore as Jacob saying. However, Jacob, although we can say it no longer exists, that's not fair to people who have a diagnosis of Asperger's and want to hold on to it. And that is also part of neurodiversity. So when we say, I've got Asperger's, if that person is very adamant that they've got Asperger's, then Asperger's is what they have. No matter if we say, well, that doesn't matter. It's a little bit like me saying, if you have borderline personality disorder, and I say, no, you don't, you have emotionally unstable personality disorder. I've just taken something away from you that I didn't need to take away. I can just go with, cool, you've got BPD. It's not called that anymore. So that's difficult. Yeah, no, I agree. So the point is, that's where it is. One of ADHD's very frustrating pros are pretty good though. Okay. So, and language is quite difficult, isn't it? So quite a few people, that as a percentage of the population, it really varies, have different forms of neurodiversity when it comes to things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, autistic spectrum disorder, any of those things. The problem is the statistics vary massively, that we turn around and say that most people are affected by this in some way, shape or form. Some people say they aren't. I mean, the problem is with disability as a group, as a whole, what they reckon is around 90% of people with disabilities have invisible disabilities. They also reckon nowadays that around 5% of the population have ADHD. And we're finding more and more people who have things that we're starting to say, hey, let's give you a diagnosis. And a diagnosis can be really handy for people, and it can absolutely cripple them as well. So again, it's a very individual choice as to if you want to get some form of diagnosis. And with a diagnosis, what you have to look at is that helpful to you? Does that help you get some kind of drugs? Does that help you get some kind of help? In the UK, for example, for ADHD, it'll take you anywhere 2 to 3 years at the moment to get a diagnosis. Now, you might be lucky and get it earlier. One of my clients has been very lucky and got their diagnosis a lot earlier because they are a doctor. So they have a special fast path, really 2 to 3 years in the UK currently. Now, if you're on the NHS and you are covered by slightly different approaches, you might find that's okay. The average waiting time for somebody to go and see someone for a diagnosis is anywhere to 6 to 12 months, and then to get the diagnosis afterwards. Isabella says that's even with private, so they're so inundated, especially with ADHD actually at the moment. It's yeah, the people aren't there to diagnose or to do anything. So it's crazy, isn't it? That is really not fair. I'm waiting for an adult SD assessment so far. ASD, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So yes, and hopefully you will get it soon. It's like most things, obesity surgery, bariatric surgery. The common waiting time at the moment, for example, is 2 years, 3 years. So we've got big waiting lists, especially after COVID. Jacob, only psychiatrists and pediatricians can diagnose ADHD in Australia. So if you in the UK, you can be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. We have pediatric psychiatrists as well in the UK. Some pediatricians can diagnose, so can chartered psychologists. It depends where they work, and other psychologists might be able to say, I think this is happening, and then send someone along. For someone like me, in other countries, I might be able to assess and diagnose if I work in Italy or other places with transaction analysis qualifications. But in the UK, I'm not allowed to. So what I have to do is say, I would like you to go and ask your doctor this or that or the other. Right. So I gave up on my ASD assessment because it's not worth it for a note on a slip of paper to tell me something I already know. And that's how some people feel very strongly, isn't it? Will it help you? What will you get for having it? You will have, however, the only thing I'll say about some neurodivergency, it's really important to think about, is it will protect you if it is a registered disability in work. So if you get some kind of hassle or you're not particularly safe in your work environment because it is a disability, it is protected under the Disabilities Act. That's the only reason I would say for you, if you don't have a diagnosis, that's a fucking good reason why to get one. So that would be one of the big things. Out of curiosity, is there an end cost to that assessment? A friend of mine in Quebec is facing 2,000 to 4,000 Canadian out of pocket for an assessment. In the UK, it can be anywhere between 1,500 to 5 grand, depending on where you go and what you want. Isabella, it can still be useful for getting any help. Yes, so we're saying the same sort of thing, and it does protect you. Psychologists in Australia can screen assess for ADHD, but not give a formal diagnosis. Correct. However, in the UK, which is what I was saying, a chartered psychologist can. 2,000 to 4,000 seems cheap for an assessment. Depends where you go. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it could be £5 really. I spoke a little bit about a word that's very much related to neurodivergence, and that is spiky profiles. So spiky profiles, what we're really talking about here is somebody might consider something of ease. This is quite easy for me to do in this way. And a lot of the time, somebody who is neurotypical will find that I can manage this, and they've got an undulating profile around that says, it's a bit harder today, it's not so good today, I can manage this, I'm struggling. When you're talking about neurodivergence, it's a spike. Fuck, I can't do it. Oh, it's okay. No, fuck, I can't do it. Actually, yes, I can today. And it's a much more spiky, it's called a spiky profile. And I quite like that because it gives you the idea that for people in neurotypical, it's an undulating principle. For people who are neurodivergent, up and down, really fucking difficult. That bit's really easy. And what you'll also find, depending on somebody's diagnosis or lack of diagnosis or their own personal experience of this, they might turn and say, oh no, sorting out a calendar I can't do. Whereas somebody else with exactly the same assessment would say, I can, I find that really easy. Because it's also about our coping mechanisms, what we've been taught, what part of the brain is affected, and how that person has been brought up. Laura says, my private assessment was around 800 to 900, but that's assessment and report only, no follow-on treatment, that costs more. It does, so that's brilliant. So that's why I'm saying you can get it at the lower end as well. At the moment, a lot of the private assessment places are really complex. Little CL says, it is for work, I'm going through this, work I'm not supportive of issues I have, so having diagnosis will add weight to adaptations, and they will, depending on your diagnosis. If the diagnosis you want is covered under the Disabilities Act in the UK, you're entitled to benefits, you're entitled to help, you're entitled to a hell of a lot more support at work, and it is legal. When you cover all neurotypes and you work out what people generally want as a form of help, what you find is what a lot of people want help with is memory and concentration, that comes into it, organizational skills and time management. And a lot of that's related to something called executive functioning. Whereas you and I might say, oh yeah, no, I've got my next 3 weeks planned. I know exactly what's going on. I can sort that out. And I've got this list of things to do. For example, I'm packing for tomorrow tonight and I've got a food shop coming. I need to do this. I need to do that. It's in my brain. I've got it. I've also got it written down as a backup. I know what I'm doing. Whereas somebody who really struggles with executive functioning, which is the part of our brain that does planning, management, and everything else as well, then if we might say, yep, that makes sense, we can do it. So some of our executive function will be around, I can do that, or I can think about it. And then some of our executive function may manage or fail at, I can't actually see it through, which is, Anna Dory says, I can plan it all out, but doing it not so much. And also depending on what sort of condition we've got, what disability, what illness, whatever you want to call it, whatever you feel happy at calling it, diagnosis, anything as well, the bit that really matters is what you're comfortable with and how much you can manage, because it might be that you also have something like a lot of these things come with other things as well. So you might have fibromyalgia, you might have something else that makes you feel utterly exhausted or tired. And of course, when our brains don't function, for us, the way we see it is, I don't like this, this doesn't work for me. So we get more frustrated and we get more tired. Anki, if you're going to say anyone from India and go into trying to chat anyone up or talk to anyone, you'll be chucked out the room. So we don't talk to people casually. If you want to say something about something to do with the topics, then you can write it. If you're going to go into, hey, I want to make a friend, or anyone want to get together and do some BDSM, you'll be straight out, just so you know. Comment, I wonder about the capacity of any given professional to deliver a definitive assessment, especially on those on the lower end of the spectrum. I 100% agree with you, Comment Queen. A lot of people do self-diagnoses, and that can be better and it can be worse. A lot of people go and see someone and they say, there's nothing wrong with you, you're fine, you just need to snap out of it or sort something out. Not true. Maybe that person's got something wrong. Other people can be really good at this. And the problem is you get kind of 20 minutes, half an hour to an hour, especially on the NHS. You don't get a lot of time with people and it's really difficult. Jacob said, it's frustrating that I need to see a psychiatrist every few months, $200 an appointment to receive my ADHD medication. It's such a protected medication that I really get that. And it's not fair, is it? If you're in the UK, you would just have a repeat prescription and maybe see someone every year or so, but it all depends on where we are, our insurance, if we're in America and other places. And in the UK, a lot of people want to do it privately and then have to pay because it's about making money. So Jacob says, I'm scatterbrained when not medicated. It makes a real difference. Most ADHD medications are kind of based around speed and amphetamines, not all the time, because the idea is that it really helps the functioning and it creates clarity rather than noise in the brain. It makes a real difference. Looks like lazy, but I find it very difficult to do things that require executive functioning. Yeah, which is what I've just been saying. It's like, I can't do that. And he agrees with you, Tip Sub. Anna says, I'm not sure if time blindness or an executive dysfunction is more of a struggle personally. Sounds like a terrible clinician, Deb. There are good and bad clinicians. Cinders, I've gone down a Google rabbit hole here. I've received several diagnoses within the past years. It's so dangerous, Cinders. It's so dangerous. But interestingly, all the cranial radiotherapy I had at 3 has been linked to neurodiversity. Add to that decades of childhood trauma is another factor. Really fascinating stuff. There is a very modern piece of research in Australia that came in last year, beginning of this year, last year, and I can hear someone's noise. I think you need to turn someone off. Jerry muted me for a bit. Sorry. So there are serious problems when it comes to diagnosis because we're not very good at it. We don't understand it. We're not very capable at it. And then add that into the fact that loads of people are good at masking. Loads of people have been brought up in certain ways, which means that they mask themselves or they're not even aware themselves, especially if they are women, female, cis-born. They are more likely not to be aware of these sorts of things. And what's interesting in that study in Australia is that what actually happened is that the form of parenting that a child has in the first 18 months can lead to a difference in the level of, for example, spectrum ASD impact. So if the child is heard, listened to, and got, that's what matters. If the child is missed emotionally, ADHD, ASD, more likely to happen. There's some really interesting research being done at the moment. So anything that impacts or affects the brain, and you could argue that radiotherapy does have an impact on the brain. There are major, Titsub says, there are major undiagnosed issues with adult women. Yep, that's very, very true. Jacob says, no, it's not fair. I think once I get an ADHD diagnosis, I should get a lifetime prescription. They can't and they won't because of the sort of drugs that they are giving you. I think they need to be looked at maybe every year, or maybe every 2 years, but certainly not every 2 to 3 months. Anna says, I have to see my doc every month for meds and in person normally, but COVID has waived that for the moment. I'm in the US. Yes, because they're much more restricted drugs. That's why. Jacob says, I have time blindness too. Cinder says, Karis, it is, since I've learned that cranial radiotherapy for all leukemia has since been found out to be useless and scrapped, at least people have learned. I mean, I wonder what MRI scans, all sorts of things would do. We'll see. Jeff, you needed to go on mute. Naughty Jeff. Right, so Aussie research, do tell Deb. I will try and find the research and put it somewhere. Unmute me. Let's see, yeah. It was a piece of Australian research. I'll try and find it. It's in my head, what I know about it. What about changing the meeting to require hosts asking to unmute? Seems to work well last week. I'll leave that to Jerry. That's why psychiatrists have 12 to 13 years of uni qualifications. And, you know, it still doesn't make them good. And they don't need 12 to 13 years. They do. So they do the same as a doctor does, and then they specialize. So it just varies as to it can become 12 to 13 years, depending on the other courses that they do. In the meantime, some just go straight through. Tits up. My autism was largely invisible until about age 16, as I was expected, as I was to start organizing myself. So Jacob, again, watch that, like that mild autism. You don't know where tits up is or what sort of autism they have or how they are. So this is, again, something that we have to be very careful about. So what you'll find if somebody is a cis-born female is that their autism, other things could actually be quite high. But they've been taught so efficiently to mask and to cover it and to work well with it compared to boys on average, sorry to be very gender specific, that we end up having a completely different diagnosis for boys. Cinders, radiotherapy. Thank you, Jacob, I appreciate that. It is recognized as being able to cause changes in the brain. The stuff I had damaged one of my eyes and also wrecked my thyroid, but honestly, I find this stuff really interesting. There are biological reasons for some people, some of the time. There are biological predispositions for some people, some of the time, and there is environment. Hits up. There is no such thing as mild, which is why I ask people to be careful, but I also appreciate that Jacob does have a diagnosis, and this is why language starts to be something for some people. So what I'm going to ask you both is not to get involved in an argument or disagreement of where it goes. Although the DSM classifies levels, I understand that, Jacob. People don't. We talk about a spectrum, so it's not linear, where people fit in different places at different times. And this is where we talk about communication around neurodiversity and neurotypical, and even different spectrum on the spectrum of if somebody has ASD or ADHD, it's about communication. And I'm going to come on to that in a bit. So what you'll also find is for some people is that they're also going to have rhythmic repetitive behaviors, and that's something called stimming. So when I was a kid, you could argue that we had stimming for different reasons. I used to blink quite hard. I used to bite my nails. And I would do certain stimming things. So you could argue, does that mean I had some kind of potential for a diagnosis, or didn't I? A lot of kids stim when they're uncomfortable, when they are anxious or are nervous. And they also stim rhythmic, repetitive behaviors. That's a classic example or a hallmark of autism as well. It could be that kids hand flap. It could be that they rock bodily. It could be that they say things, and that's why Tourette's comes into the spectrum as well. It can be that they pat and do different things. And what you find is a lot of the time when someone has a very overwhelming form of autism where they're completely almost trapped in their body, what you'll find is, and in their mind, so their capacity to even communicate is gone. And that does happen sometimes. When you're working with somebody who's at that level, it's all about the amount of noise in their head, so it can't be shared. And again, there's some really interesting documentaries looking at people trying to get their messages out and how their brains work and what they do, because the assumptions that are made around people who are neurodiverse. Cosmopolite. I went to a psychiatrist recently and asked to be evaluated for complex PTSD, and he told me he'd never heard of it. Complex in front of PTSD. Okay, Karis's hands are, hallelujah, what the fuck is going on? Oh dear, not all psychiatrists are capable of diagnosing regardless of qualifications. No, and I would also argue if you see someone like me, if we've really studied, and some of us have, we'll see it and we'll say, go and see a psychiatrist. And then we meet a fucking psychiatrist like that. Very frustrating. And there are differences between complex and PTSD. And I would also argue that complex and PTSD and anorexia, I've also said this before, have massive impact and changes on the brain permanently. And they can then fall into neurodivergence because of the way the brain's been impacted afterwards. Isabella says, I love stimming, it settles me, so I have my bear with me in basically at all times. Thumb sucking in a very young child is its own form of stimming. Playing with hair, its own form of stimming. Rocking. When you watch people, like for example, if they think they have a child, people with dementia, many forms of dementia as well, I totally understand that. If they're rocking a pram, they're not really rocking the pram, they're rocking themselves with the excuse of the pram. And it's a form of stimming, so it stimulates, it helps. And it stimulates, again, I think it's really misleading as a word, as stimming, because what it really is in that rhythmic repetitive behavior, it is calming. It is really calming. And that's what helps. So people say it's come from this, it's come from trauma and it's suppressing, but actually, as I say, it's really, really misunderstood. It helps people have a sense of control. It helps people have a sense of calm, and it helps people say, this is how I feel better. Soothing. I wonder if there is a diagnosis for constant overwhelming noise in the head. Right, so again, it depends what you mean by noise. And as Jerry went straight into is tinnitus. Of course, noise in the head can be caused by something like tinnitus. Tinnitus, what's that? It's a new character in Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. So tinnitus, of course, can have that sort of impact. However, so can OCD, so can spectrum, so can lots of things can create noise in the head. It depends what we mean. It depends whether it's a voices, depends whether it's a sound, and it depends why. So What you find as well with more extreme forms of autism, like Jacob said, I taught a class of AC students, 3 to 4 of these, was that 3/4 of these students were non-verbal? I think that is 3/4 because of the S on the end. So it's so much noise that there is no room for anything else. So again, you could argue that ASD, people with ASD, yeah. I think there is somewhere in the DSM-5, ISD 11, depending on which one you read. So relentless churn of thought. So again, so that can be ASD, that could be OCD, and it could be many other things. I mean, schizophrenia is all about voices and different things in the head. So relentless churn of thought is more likely to fall into OCD. However, it might not be. That's the problem. 5 minutes, you spend 3 seconds and you say, right, what is this? So that needs long conversations. But relentless churn of thought can be anxiety, can be stress, can be burnout, can be OCD as the most common, easy ones to start with. Can you stop stimming if it's hurting them, such as biting fingers until they bleed? You cannot stop someone stimming. If it helps, let them stim. Honestly, let them stim. See, when you take away something that helps someone, so if someone comes in to see me as a therapist and I turn around and say, oh, yeah, no, that's shit, don't do that, that's terrible, we're going to cut that out. So the way that Adrian Lee in transactional analysis talks about when somebody comes into therapy, that they are drowning and they're drowning up to here. And they've got balloons in their hands and weights on their feet. And it's a very precarious balance of life. The balloons are coping mechanisms that people have developed. So in this case, it could be stimming, or it could be masking. It could be, in other cases, it could be things that I do to make me feel okay, or things I don't do. It could even be depression. It could be anything. It could be systems that we have created in order for us to be okay. And then the weights on the bottom of the person's feet are things along the lines of trauma, things that have happened, genetics, epigenetics, brains, everything. It is no good cutting off a weight to change something for somebody if you don't have a look at a balloon at the same time. And what we have to learn to do is, if we take off a weight, we have to repair that or put a different balloon in place. Because if I take away all of your coping mechanisms, let's say if they're binge eating or anything else as well, you are just going to fucking drown. So if we just stop someone from doing something without giving something else, it won't help. So for example, a lot of people pick and do things with skin as a form of stimming and a form of being okay. Sometimes it's okay to cut the person's nails, clearly with consent and permission. Different if they're children, I really understand that. But then sometimes like makeup brushes can really help. Different stimulus, different things that people can use. So if you're going to take away something, you have to replace it with something, and you can't just stop. And I know as a dominant, we would like to turn around and say, we can sort that in BDSM. Good luck. Because if I have £200,000 worth of training and I can't do it, no offense, neither can you. And not only neither can you, gonna have a go at you right now, not only neither can you, to think that you can, I'm not saying this to you, Jim, I'm talking to dominants generally, this isn't personal. So we've got to be really careful about assuming that we can change someone's okayness. I was asked in the workshop on Sunday, Jesus, was I asked some interesting questions. You know, when I think people have just been planted in the audience to ask me the most difficult questions ever on the planet. Oh, it was one of those. It was really tough. Oh, fuck. It really was. And one of the questions was like, I'm neurodiverse. Can I get my master or my top to change things for my whole life in order to create new habits and make me feel better? Do you know what the long-term answer to that is? Probably not. Because if you create your okayness through somebody else and that person goes and leaves, your okayness is attached to them, and now we have a problem. Now, if you have a very good, healthy relationship and it lasts for years, it might happen, but the things need to be changed very slowly and very gently. So again, we've got to be very careful. I think of stimming as giving my background brain something to focus on, which allows me to focus on other things. Yes, so the stimulation bit where it works is it's like taking speed and amphetamines. It's an overstimulation of part of it so we can really manage. So that's what we're trying to do. I had no idea thumb sucking is stimming. It isn't necessarily perfectly stimming, but it is a form of calming or soothing with a repetitive behavior, which just enables us to do something and feel calm. So we find something to do. I used to do that as a child and I stopped in my late teens. Since being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, that urge returns often. Very interesting. And look, also Valkyrie, like if you, I don't know if you feel about your if you have a little, I don't know where you fall on any of this when it comes to BDSM and or poly, you know, we can get adult dummies, we can get things to suck on that can actually make us feel quite good, like a comforter or a soother. That, you know, children love transitional objects. Cuthbert Bear is probably here somewhere watching. There is Cuthbert Bear. I mean, Cuthbert Bear. Cuthbert Bear is that representation of a real life being. There is Cuthbert Bear. But also what Cuthbert Bear represents is that transitional object. So when we're young, we latch onto something to make us feel better, and it stimulates us in a certain way, so it calms and soothes us. So that's part of it. Master Jim, people have tried to stop me skin pick, but it doesn't really work. It's soothing to me. Yes. ASD has a lot of comorbidities, Deb, I heard. It does. Can spiky profiles differ? 100%. I'll go into the rest of that question. Every single person's profile is 100% different. If you turn around and say, it's a bit like saying, oh yeah, I've got a friend with ASD, I know what that means. No, you fucking don't, because you haven't asked the person. Everyone's symptoms can be totally different. Everyone's lived experience of it can be different because it involves the human being. And that's the thing. That's the thing that makes the difference. Someone has a developmental disorder rather than something like a TBI that was acquired. I just want to make sure I understand spiky profiles. So spiky is about the up and downness of it. So, for example, if somebody has an acquired injury of some kind, they could get spiky about something they used to be able to do and now they can't, and they're very frustrated about it. They can and then they can't, they can and then they can't. It'll vary. So the spike is the difference in people. So what you've got with neurotypical is, I mean, look up spiky profiles, it'll tell you. So you've got this undulating principle, which is very different to anyone who's neurodiverse is I can and I can't. Whereas neurotypical people can say, I can have a go at that. That's kind of okay. It's not a big thing for me. So it's about the ease within which we can manage things, and everyone is personal and different. So it can be developmental or acquired, both have spiky profiles. Yes, so I think I've just said that. Okay. Damn, I wish I'd come to Lamb instead of the Jubilee do. Honestly, the questions were, some twat was after me that day, I tell you. If you listened to that day, it was. So can I just ask you about the propriety of watching lesbian porn as a cis male? What are your opinions and thoughts on that? I was like, oh God, okay. And then, okay, can we talk about whether race play and Jewish play, like Judaism, Nazism, do you think those things are ethically responsible? And I was like, oh my God, it was really one of those days. Debs, even everyone's introverted personality is different. Look, everything about us is different. That's the point. And that's what we have to learn. And that's why with neurodiversity, what we've got to do is fucking ask the person. That's what we need to work out. So when you have someone stimming and ASD spectrum, all sorts of different things, what we're talking about here, what often people talk about, is uncontainable emotion, unprocessed emotion. How do I do this? How do I work with this? And what does this look like is a really important question. So although for lots of people, and this is why you can't stop them, stimming is automatic. It just comes in. It is a response. It is often a response to a sensory overload. So the way we can help with stimming is to reduce the sensory overload. However, we need to know what the sensory overload looks like for each person. So for example, I have a client who's had to just go back to work in London, and we've really worked hard on how she's managing the lights, how she's managing the noise on her desk. There is piped through music and there is a playlist, and it's not right for her. It really makes her not feel okay. So we've really been working on her okayness to ask for that to change. How does she change it? What does she do? What can she do about the lights? What can she ask for? And those powers that she feels okay, if that makes sense. So, and I mean, stims can cause injury. However, the argument could be that not doing anything could cause a greater injury, whether it's internal or external. And anybody who's on some form of spectrum or neurodivergent can be really overwhelmed by new sensations or current sensations that are actually happening, and will stim to regain control. So like, you know, when people are really frightened of something, you can really see people go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, I was in America and I stupidly went on the Raptor ride. Fucking, why did I do that? Honestly, I just pinned my feet on the floor really hard. And I was like, first of all, I was like, oh my God, why the fuck am I doing this? Fuck, I'm scared. Fuck, fuck, fuck. That's not going to help me. So I just repetitively said, and breathe, and it's over in a minute, and breathe. I just kept repeating something to make myself feel like I was going to live. I genuinely thought I was going to die. It was absolutely awful. So everybody's got their own internal metronome when it comes to a pattern or a stimulation, a sound or a principle that makes us feel better. So it helps us go, I feel better now. So when you see someone, I mean, I find it really interesting, especially around neurodiversity. If you see someone stimming, don't try and stop them. Even as a master or a dominant, don't take their hand away. Don't change it. Help them, let them do it. And when it stops, say to them, what can I do to help you? What was the stimulus that was too much? What can we change for you? Try talking to someone as a human being, but don't ask too many questions, and I'll come on to that as well. So, and of course, a lot of people try and stop stimming because it's fucking awful when it comes to the society, the world that we live in. Oh, you're mad, you're not okay, you've got something wrong with you. And we watch people who do all sorts of things, and we go, I'm just going to avoid that person. Actually, that's making them okay in the world. And yet now we're judging and we're making things worse for them and at work. Not good. Another thing that really comes in, I've mentioned masking. Another thing that's come in maybe a little bit more recently as a principle, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, is something called double empathy. That's what I wanted to go to next, double empathy. So, because somebody had asked about that earlier. When we try and work out where we are in the world, where we are with somebody else, it's really hard. And those social interactions for somebody who is neurodiverse is hard. So the problem is we then look at what the neurodivergent person needs or wants. And what we have is something called the double empathy problem. Have people heard of double empathy? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But it's all about the communication breakdown between somebody who is neurodivergent and or on the spectrum, mainly what we're talking about here, and or somebody who is neurotypical. It's a problem. What we tend to do is we say, well, that person has to change to the way I am, rather than me asking, how can I help you? How can we do it? But then what we have in this problem is that the breakdown is caused by both the communication. It's not just because that person does something differently. You have to learn how to do something differently too. If you are willing to communicate with people that are outside of your okayness or your normalness. Fucking hate those words, however. So what we've got, what people are talking about is, and it is just a theory at the moment, is that it's about both people. So it's a mismatch between two people having a conversation or having some form of communication, and it's a gap. And it's not because autistic people have trouble understanding non-autistic people or neurodivergent, neurotypical. It's also because it goes the other way around. It's from you as well. It also happens between, I was going to come on to that. It also happens between two neurodivergent people. I have a safe word for when I'm overstimulated. Code purple is my phrase for I'm overdone, and I'll get back to you when I have enough spoons. Brilliant. So again, especially within BDSM and neurodivergence, having different safe words for different situations is really important. Whether it is emotional stimulation, whether it's somebody who's overwhelmed, whether it is somebody wanting to stop something, not because they didn't like the play, but because they don't like the emotional aspect to it or the overwhelm that's happening. So again, safe words for different reasons are really, really important. So what we're talking about here, when you think about it, when you're talking about double empathy, is it's both people's problems. And I think it was somebody called Milton who wrote a paper in, I don't know, the mid to 2010, 11, maybe a bit later, not sure, sorry, I'd have to look it up. But they were the first person to talk about that particular theory of the mind and the double empathy problem. So, I mean, any color could do. In fact, like in olden days when I started, and I still got somebody, I know someone called Les who I slept, Deb, different safe words. I only have the one equals safe word. Yes, but people like different safe words for different reasons at different times. So it's okay. It depends what works for the people. That's what's relevant. I saw Les, and oh God, this was so many years ago. And my safe word was silver at that time, many, many years ago. And in fact, it still is. If I really want a safe word, that's always what I'll go to quite naturally, because it's been my safe word for 30 years plus. So it's quite a natural word, but it's not something I talk about a lot or go to. And it's quite funny because it was his birthday the other day, and I said, happy birthday, you. We only text each other on our birthdays. We have no other communication whatsoever. And he goes, thanks, Silver, because it's what he calls me. And then he'll say happy birthday, Silver, to me, because it's my birthday a week on Friday. But so Diana, you can use any color, anything that works for you for any reason that represents something. Different safe, cosmopolite. I think one of the biggest assumptions I've seen is the assumption that two neurodivergent people communicate in the same way and will therefore always understand each other well. Yeah, the hand over the face is really that. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about double empathy, or when I'm talking about anything else as well. And I'm talking about how different each neurodivergent person is. Everybody has different, it's like saying everybody's anxiety is the same. Or even, I'll tell you what it's like, is saying, oh, you've got cancer, there is only one type. I mean, just breast cancer alone. Do you know how many forms of cancer there are? Bloody thousands of the fuckers. So why on earth would we say you've only got one cancer and say there's only one form of neurodiversity? It's not okay. We have to be really careful about how we use some of these words. Oh, you two will get on. You're both autistic. No, could fucking kill each other and hate each other. And actually, if one person's used to stimming in a certain way or doing things, could drive the other person absolutely mad, and that they won't feel okay. Another thing that is really common and can affect BDSM, relationships, and everything else as well, is something called masking. So when people mask, what they're trying to do is they are trying to protect themselves from the rest of us, the world, the way people judge and what they do. So it's a survival tool. I said that really badly. It's a survival tool where we're trying to engage in something quite normal. So masking is a camouflage, it's a cover up. With good communication, two NDs together can be a beautiful thing, a kind of shorthand to understanding, and also a complete and utter nightmare. So that's the point, isn't it? So everything about all of this is a spectrum. It's here to here, or it's here, or it's here, and that's the point. So trying to act normal, yeah, so whatever normal is, when we're trying to fit in. So if we have had trauma, and actually our experiences create more trauma because of who we are and the way that we are, people will try and mask. They're trying to avoid being bullied, criticized, judged, had a go at, trying to fit in with the workforce. So people mask because you're going to get called names, you're going to have some stigma attached to you potentially, work won't promote you or see you as okay. Hey, you might want to try and make friends, and that can be really difficult if we aren't considered whatever that is, that normal. So people can mask in very interesting ways. They can mirror. So if you're with someone and they're very much mirroring your behavior, you might think, that's a bit strange. They're doing it to try and fit in. They might take their tone of voice to yours. They might take the speed at which you speak to the same as yours. And they might copy your body language as you're doing things. Now, people naturally mirror in their own ways as well. I loathe change in almost every form. I wish there was a pill for that. So you can work on that in therapy. Cool mint cream, sorry, you can. That is something, change is difficult, but you can work on that. So what you'll also find with masking is some people will give the answer you expect to hear instead of the answer they want to give. That can also happen in things like codependency, anxiety, stress, and different things. The willingness to fit in. I'm going to give you an answer that you want to hear, rather than me telling you exactly how it is for me, because I'm scared of the outcome and what's going to happen. They might just nod and really look at what's going on like this, but never really catch anyone's eye. It just looks like they're listening and they can really join in, but they don't get it and they can't. Maybe not choose anti-disestablishmentarianism as a safe word. I need very much a safe finger signal, tapping, bed surface, flesh, because of going non-verbal in space. So if you want non-verbals, there are things like bells. There are things like I have upstairs in my cupboard, especially if I'm going to be blindfolded. I hate being gagged. I very rarely go non-verbal, but like if you're in a dark room or maybe someone doesn't hear with music, I have flashing balls. They're really good. The bouncy balls that are, you know, the ones you get for kids that flash in the dark, or something noisy when it drops. There are loads of things that you can do. So it doesn't just have to be that. Jacob, Deb, that sounds a bit like mirroring. Yes, so it is mirroring in its own way. Mirror neurons really help us. I was told about to be intro to counselling units to facilitate rapport with clients. Yes, so what you will find is to facilitate rapport for human beings, we naturally mirror. Somebody will really go out to mirror if they're trying to mask as well, and it might go too far, so then we know something's going on. My girl is a great mimic, says Master Jim. Sometimes it's like being with Bumblebee from the Transformers. I really love that, and I really love that as an image. Like, that's so gorgeous. I love that. So it's true. So and what you will find sometimes though is that sometimes people will really get it right, but it can also sound like someone's taking the piss, not getting it quite right. The eye contact can be too much, too intense, because they know they've got to have eye contact. And you're like, okay, why is this person staring at me? So they're forcing it and yeah, and actually really inappropriate moment, really trying to join in and do things. So masking can be a fucking nightmare because they will stop stimming, and actually it just causes so much overstimulation and horrificness for that person. It takes every single part of their being to do it. And then we end up in real trouble because they're actually go home and feel really ill and not well. So what do we do, especially if we're going to start talking about kink and neurodiversity? If we're talking about kink and polyamory, what we need is absolutely straightforward, clear language that's even sometimes a bit blunt. Now, first of all, ask the person what sort of language they like. If they don't know, you need to experiment with them. It might be that somebody prefers to write or draw, not have to listen all the time. There might be other ways of communication. Somebody might prefer to text. I sometimes find it easier to text than I do to speak on the phone. I do tend to overstimulate. I'm doing 3 things at once fairly often. So I like texting. That's definitely something that I do. So we're all different as to how we like to communicate. What you will find if you have a neurodiverse colleague, if you have a neurodiverse partner, friend, they're going to take a lot of what you say at face value. So if you say it, then you're going to do it, or it means that you're going to do it, or that is the way that it is. So watch what you say. So if you become sarcastic, if you become a bit snarky and go, yeah, right, okay, I'm really going to do that then 1,000 times. Okay, you are then. So again, not all the time. I'm just talking about some real generalizations here. So please, especially with your facial expressions and other things, short, sharp, clear. Now, for more effective communication, especially when I'm working with couples, I recommend that anyway. When we start talking and we say, so I was thinking, I mean, you know, clear, you don't, you know, it's not, you haven't said anything yet, but you're kind of faffing around what you really need to say. I am upset. That's it. That's all you need to say. And there can be a bit more with it. Or please, can you put this top on there for me? Look, if you don't mind, I mean, only if you're going that way. So it's because that thing's come off. And I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't, it's too confusing. Clarity is really important. Now, I think clarity is important in negotiating BDSM play anyway. I'm going to hit you 7 times with this here. Do you understand what that means? Is a lot easier than, so I'm thinking of doing a little bit of sensation play, and we make this whole extensive thing. You can just bloody say it. Anna, I like texting and written communication so I can go back and read them because my memory sucks for spoken only communication. Exactly what I mean. Even to record it sometimes helps. We're just very different. What you will find with some people who are neurodiverse is straight honesty and directness that can feel very uncomfortable. And some people will mistake it for rudeness or aggression. Check. Ask. Because if that person is really struggling with how they feel or in some kind of sensory overload and they just blurt something out or say something, they're doing it so they feel okay. So what can I do? Do you need the lights turned off, music? Then shut up. Listen to their response. Yes, Anna, I often go back and reread text conversations. And you know what? In BDSM exchanges, when you're getting consent and permission, it's really good to have it written anyway. It will help you if something blows up and you end up in a police cell. So not only is it great for neurodiversity, it's also good for your safety. So when you are also engaged in some kind of neurodiverse like a conversation around safety or around what you're about to do, please make sure that how much you're telling them at any one time is also paced for that person. It's the same for me. I'm very quick sometimes in the way I talk and the way I think. Boom, 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 boom. And I have to really watch that with some of my clients sometimes. I have to shut the fuck up a little bit at a time. Just enough there. Now, it might be that person is incredible at maths, incredible at analytics, incredible at looking at graphs and calculus, and very good at analytics. But if I'm talking about emotions and doing all this stuff, I've lost them entirely. Watch your flow, watch your process around information and communication. Debbie, I prefer written communication because my inner monologue is way too busy and my speech gets confused. My brain is faster than my mouth. My brain is faster than my typing fingers. And when I type sometimes, I press send and I go, oh my God, most of that is misspelled and it's absolutely awful. Shouldn't have pressed send, but my brain's just gone. Honestly, it's been there. At work, I normally have another person read my emails for the proper tone because I'm very much to the point. Exactly. And look, do we need some niceties? It depends on the culture that you live in. And it depends on your work culture. Sometimes clarity is really great, and sometimes it isn't. So it really depends. I'm a pretty challenging therapist. So I often do it for my clients. So like, for example, if I have clients with dissociative identity disorder, which I have two at the moment, actually, speaking to one earlier, she was in a dungeon and she felt like she did something wrong. Someone shouted, she ran, she can't quite remember what's happened. So as part of our session, what I've said is, let's create a letter to that person done by email. So you can ask what happened so we can find out, because she can't remember because she switched. She just split at that moment and went somewhere else. And, it's the threat for both of them as they're starting to integrate and start to feel better, which takes a long time. You don't even know who you're talking to and when and why. And the threat of all of these identities becoming one, and they don't have to all the time. That's not always, it's how you help that person heal. So sometimes it's all about helping write a letter or an email or something as well. When I write emails, I often go back before I send and put a chatty opener at the top. Hi, hope you're well. That's enough, isn't it, sometimes? And it'll see us as such that they have to do that too. Valkyrie says, I like clear and direct communication. I will take information given literally. Exactly. Vagueness doesn't work with me. If someone says they like me, I take it as that. So if their actions don't fit that narrative, I will cease all communication because I can't trust anything they will say to be true. Oh, that causes me anxiety and can be crippling. I bet my heart just goes, oh, inside reading that for you, Valkyrie, because I really understand that. When you're just like, you said this, you're not doing it, I don't get it. And that internal conversation is so painful. So I think it's really important for us to know the differences. So if you do have somebody, Cosmopolite says the same, if you do have somebody, if you've got conversations that don't sound quite right, if you're saying, look at me, I'm talking to you, actually, why isn't that person looking at you? Is it because they feel guilty, or is it because they're neurodivergent? Are they even aware? We don't know, but maybe we should find out. So often we're almost speaking different languages when we're trying to have this form of communication. So we need to learn to speak that person's language and they need to learn to speak ours. It is a two-way thing. It isn't a one-way. If somebody's neurodivergent, they don't have to come all the way to meet me. The same as I don't always have to go all the way to meet them. There is a balance to be had somewhere, and sometimes it might be closer to them and sometimes it might be closer to me. I'm just using me as an example in the scenario. And it might be that someone says, if you take something ridiculous like emptying the dishwasher, can you empty the dishwasher? You told me I can do it whenever I feel like it. That doesn't make sense. I don't understand. Well, no, it needs doing when it's finished. But you didn't say that. Oh, for fuck's sake, I've told you. But it's the lack of clarity in the communication that's often a problem for people. So we don't see the world in the way it is something I read a long time ago. We don't see the world in the way that it is. We see the world the way we are. And I love that phrase. I think it's really important. We see the world from our own perspective, not the way it is. And to help people communicate, we really have to do that. Thanks, Debs. That's helped a lot. I'm really glad, Taz. Thank you. Jacob, it's too confronting to look directly at the person when discussing sensitive topics. For sure it can be. For me, I'm on a screen for anywhere between 8 to 12 hours a day. I don't always look at you, even in this Zoom conversation. If you were in a meeting with somebody, you would not just be doing this. It is unnatural. It's not healthy. I'm going to get Zoom fatigue if I do that sort of thing. So I look around, I look down, I've maybe got a pen, I've maybe got a drink. We all do different things. It is too much generally. So what we're looking at and what we have to think about is our communication styles. When we're looking at styles, we're looking at maybe the logic versus the emotional. So depending on that person's diversity or typicalness, how good are they at either? What does that mean? Are we looking concrete versus abstract? Sometimes it needs to be absolutely concrete and clear. If it's too abstract, yeah, no, just do it whenever you want. No. It's the same when you're negotiating with a child. Please tidy your bedroom by 8 o'clock tonight. Can you repeat that back to me, please? So, added the please, it was a bit harsh, wasn't it? So can you, sometimes I don't think I'm clear. Can you let me know what I just said? You want me to tidy my bedroom some point by tomorrow? No, I didn't. I said 8 o'clock tonight. Are we on the same page? When? Yes, all right, tonight. Yeah, but when tonight? 8 o'clock. Okay. And that sounds really harsh. But with everything that's going on, for example, in a child's brain, when they're trying to think of everything and everything, their whole system is starting to collapse, being specific really helps. So we need concrete versus abstract. We also need to have absolutist versus relative. So by this time gives an absolute clarity rather than, yeah, I don't know, by tonight, later. So for example, my second youngest, sorry, I've got too many kids, is coming home for the summer. Her and I really disagree on how to run a home. Ooh, it can get interesting. There aren't major arguments. I pull out of that. I'm not interested. She is neurodiverse in her own way. She has her own horrific things going on for her. Sometimes she's just too tired. Sometimes she can't manage something, but I want it done by a certain time. So I pull out of that conversation now rather than making it really bad for her. If I want it done, I sort it. It is my home. However, what I'm aware of is the sensitivity as well. So I will negotiate with her and I will say to her, can you do that by 9? Because if I'm going to bed by 10, I will feel better knowing that it's done. And she'll say, yeah, I can do that. Or she'll say, no, I can't. Can it be 9:30? So then it's all about negotiation to make it work. What you've got to remember as well is when you are talking to someone, you have filters on. You have filters on that include your expectations and your stereotypes, where you are saying, this is what normal people should do. This is what my family should do. This is what all people should do. No, that's your filter. That's your society. That's your culture with a small s and a small c, your home. So we have to be really careful. Anna says, I'm more comfortable with reactive service versus anticipatory service because of that. Give me clear, specific written orders and I will do the thing. Assume I'll see it. No. Yes, I agree with that. So it's about clarity. Every conversation, we also bring our bruises and our wounds in. So we bring in our hurt. And if that's trauma-based and everything else as well, we've got to be really careful about that, because when we bump up against somebody else, we don't know if their bruise is hitting ours or whether we're creating more bruises or we're creating more bruises for ourselves. So we have to look at that. So that's all about our past, what it means and what it looks like. Also, how we are in this very moment. If somebody isn't okay today, or they've had a really bad day, they've been overstimming, they've been over masking, everything has felt a bit too much for them in every single way, they can't do it anymore. So they're just out for the day. I've had enough. So our mood in that moment also really, really, really impacts us as well. And you can get somebody who's neurodiverse and neurotypical really struggle with change. It doesn't mean that they're one or the other. It doesn't mean that we can trust social cues, because we may or may not understand them depending on our upbringing. Isabella says, this is where the spoons theory comes in handy. So you've got a couple of theories here, like the spoons, the fork theory, which basically talk about that energy is finite. That's really what we're talking about, how we organize and structure our energy and how much energy we have in any moment to say, this is how much I've got, and I spent too much today, I've borrowed too much from tomorrow. I'm always saying to Kaden, she's got 3 major pieces due in by the end of today. I know damn well a couple of her friends and her girlfriend are probably helping her right now with some of it, because she's been absolutely ill this week to the point where she's vomiting some blood. because where she vomits so badly with what she's got, she cuts the back of her throat. And that's not very nice. You vomit some blood, you feel like sick again, and you vomit again, which means food doesn't stay down, which means she doesn't have any energy when she's in a really bad place. Because she has hypermobility spectrum disorder, fibromyalgia, vomiting syndrome. She has quite a few things, and you wouldn't know. She doesn't moan a lot. She's a pretty good kid. She's 24. So however, this is also where people can step up and help in their own way as well. Is that wrong? Is it right? It's interesting, isn't it? We have to learn how to manage life, and unfortunately, work, university, they ain't so good at the spoons theory. Some universities sometimes will let you get away with some stuff. Eventually, they'll turn around and say that's enough. So we've got to be really careful about the nuance, the grey. We've got to be careful about clarity, about abstract, about structured, about time in all of our communication, and ask how that is. So that's especially important around kink. If you are going to do kink in any way, shape or form with somebody who doesn't have a similar or an understanding communicative pattern similar to yours, you are going to get into trouble in some way, shape or form at some point. So we really need, I think often neurodiverse people are so frustrated with how much they're misunderstood that they will often go straight into details or miss things or take things out because they're so used to being interpreted and misunderstood that we just have to double check sometimes and say, hang on. So that's difficult. And I think you do have to think about that. I've had this conversation 30 times. Nobody ever understands me. So let me just be really clear here. Oh, you're topping from the bottom. No, I'm not. I just need to be clear. So it can be really good in kink for neurodiverse people because there is a lot of communication. There has to be a lot of clarity in what we do. So a lot of neurodiverse people will fucking love that. And some neurodiverse people go, I can't fucking handle that. I'm out. So it really varies. So it's about consistency as well. So this is a little bit like a clitoral orgasm, and educate quite a few people. Now, one of the things about clitoral orgasm is consistency. If you rub, come off, and start again, or if you change your mind or you do anything else as well, that orgasm isn't coming for most people. Consistency is really fucking important. Be consistent. And it's the same for this. These are my boundaries. They don't change today or tomorrow, because what you'll do is you'll meet somebody who turns like Valkyrie or somebody else as well, say, fuck this, I can't handle it because it's changing and I can't deal with that. Consistency is key. So neurodiversity of the kink world itself is one of its biggest advantages. It's fantastic. It's one of the good things. And this is all about accessibility. This is all about people growing, equity, equality. Those things really matter. And kink is really aware of that. So that can really, really help. So I think we really have to be aware and understand other people's anxiety and how it works. Anybody have a question before we go on to Headspace at all about neurodiversity? At John Doe, you need to put yourself on mute. Oh, I haven't heard John Doe. Have you, Jerry?
No, I think he's gone.
Oh, never mind. Didn't like me. Probably a good thing. Right. Anyone got any form of other question before we start going to Headspace at all? And a few people might leave now, especially if they were just interested in the neurodiverse bit. And it, funny enough, so those that aren't, who are more neurotypical, probably say out politeness and say, oh, this is a bit, and we'll do that. But the more neurodiverse will go, oh, I've just done that, I'm off. And that will really vary as well. And I love that. John Doe is up there. I can see him, he's up the top. I don't think he is muted. Thank you. Yeah, definitely not. By the looks of things, I can't mute him. The National Coalition for Sexual Freedom published research showing that miscommunication was the biggest reason for consent incidents amongst kinks surveyed. So communication, stars and double checking for understanding is really important. I'm going to be one of those people. Deb's lovely workshop as always. Thank you. All right, I don't mind. See you later. We're off for food. See, told you. Oh, you're away. I didn't even know you were here, Poppy. Love you. See you soon. Okay. What I'm told often during sex and around consent is we get carried away with lust, we get carried away with feeling, and we say, it doesn't fucking matter, just leave it. So my youngest daughter came to me yesterday and she said, was it today? It doesn't matter. And she said to me, Mum, can I ask you a weird question? And I went, yeah, of course you can. I mean, God knows what's coming. She went, CNC. I was like, oh, okay. She said, so what's CNC exactly? She said, I get it's consensual, not consent, but what does it mean? The second topic is Headspace. It's all about the sort of places we get our minds into, how we can help change, and how that may impact BDSM and polyamory and relationships. So back to Erin. So Erin turned around and said, Mum, talk to me about CNC. I've met this guy. We're kind of casual. She's got a couple of friends with benefits. He wants CNC with quite extreme knife play and choking, a few other things. And I said, can you define extreme knife play? Because I don't understand what that means. And she said, he likes cutting. And I said, blimey, a friend with benefits, with CNC and cutting, with a really sharp knife? I have some concerns about that. My answer will be, I don't think so. and it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think that needs a shit ton of negotiation. It needs care in a relationship, and it needs an understanding of the consequences. And funny enough, it was one of the topics that came up on Sunday. Do you understand the way muscles work if you cut through or along with? Do you understand how things open up? Do you understand all of these things? Does he understand how to avoid serious injury with cutting? Exactly. Does he have a kit on him that could help patch her up? Does he know that he would have to phone 999 or in a different country if things really went wrong? And where's his care and commitment if this is just a friend with benefits scenario? There is always a problem in the communication, especially more now than ever, and especially with younger people who are massively into freak talk, and older people who are just finding BDSM like, yes, I'm just going to do everything, let's go. We still need to have conversations about what happens. And communication is one of our best advantages. We say we're brilliant at it, but actually we're not. So freak talk is the kids' word for like dark TikTok, the really sexy stuff, the stuff that people do. I mean, there is so much vanilla shaming on freak talk. It's really shocking. They are happily saying things like, if you ain't got bruises, you don't know what you're missing out on. You're fucking normal sex. I ain't going out with a chick if I can't fucking choke her out until she's passed out. It's like, it's really quite shocking what's going on. And they are between the ages of 16, 17, 18. And like I'd say, Erin isn't that age. She's 22, 23. It's really disturbing. It really is. And if I went in and said anything, I'd be some sanctimonious old woman who's missing out on having good sex, apparently. That's where I would go. So we've got to be very careful about the communication that we have. So I really agree with that. And as you say, the NCSF are great at doing that sort of research. We get carried away by lust. And so lust is a headspace. We've got to be really careful about lust because we stop using our brain. Love does the same to us. I feel totally enamored with someone at the moment, absolutely into him, just like, yes, I'm in. Whoosh, my head's there. And I've got to be so aware and just bring it down sometimes and say, and let's be real, and let's be okay, and let's be more present. Yes, let's do this. Oh, yeah. You have to be aware of it because love is this really awful drug. I was just talking to a client today who has had all this lusty love feeling, and now the practicality is coming into their relationship. And as the practicality is coming in, actually, it's quite hard to then work out the fact that they live in different countries, the fact that she's a complete neat freak, tidy, structured every day, and this person, my client, really isn't. And those differences are now starting to show up. And my client is exhausted at trying to keep up their communication levels. Some do, some don't. I like a lot of communication. I can keep that going. Jacob, like with the males experiencing pre versus post orgasm. Again, not all males all the time. So I spoke about this the other day when I was talking about orgasms and sex and sleep. Some men do fall asleep, not all men. It's because of the different hormones that are being put out into their body. Some men won't fall asleep at all and can go again within 10 minutes. It just really varies. So it isn't everybody always. Okay, so let's talk about Headspace. Now, if you try and look up Headspace, it's like you'll get an English app or an American app. I don't know who it's by. But what we're really talking about here is what somebody said last week or 2 weeks ago. They turned around and said, how do you change your headspace? Not even my Dom could get me out of my headspace. That's an interesting thing for me. I think headspace is all about the mood that we're in, the okayness that we're in, our mental health, how much things are impacting us, whether we're stressed, whether we're tired, and how we are. The thing that worried me in that statement, and I understand the innocence in it as well, the thing that me as a therapist is if we rely on someone else to get us out of our headspace, then we aren't learning to do it by ourselves. We're not learning to manage it. So we have to learn to manage our headspace. I think that's really important. We need to look after our mental health. We need to talk about our feelings. We need to talk about how we are. We need to be aware of where we are. And that's quite hard for some of us to be able to talk about our feelings, to be able to find the people, because a lot of people are also oversharing feelings at the moment. So there is a lot of trauma sharing going on as well. I've got a lot of younger clients who are at university who are turning around and definitely having circumstances and situations where they are oversharing, asking the person to help them sort their life out. No, don't talk about that. I can't handle that. You can't do that. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. Cosmopolite boundaries 101. We all need boundaries, or you see it on social media. I really can't bear it when people say, I'm in the hospital in A&E. That's it. Because what we all now naturally do is, oh my God, are you okay? What's happened? If you're going to put, I'm in A&E, I'm okay, I think I've broken my thumb. Please send me chocolate and love and wine and whatever it is you want to ask for. Please pray for me. Please send me love. Don't just say I'm in A&E. Oh my God, okay, it's an attention-seeking thing that isn't probably healthy for anybody because people worry. So we need to talk about our feelings, not on social media, not on places where people don't care for us. Try and find problem, situation, and actionable thing. Yes, which is a very functional way of seeing it, isn't it? What's the problem? What's the situation? What can we do? Jacob reminds me of how Marty Seligman said, misery likes company, but company does not like misery. Very true. Tits up. I really appreciate that aspect of growing older, ever improving management of headspace. Now, naturally, the older we get, often people do get, not all, always, again, it's one of my favorite expressions, not all, always, we do manage our headspace better. We're more aware of time. We're more aware of, again, depending on our neurodiversity and neurotypicalness as well, we're more aware of how we can manage life and what it looks like. And we can often alleviate some pressures when we start to find ourselves and see how we are. So we need to talk about our feelings. We need to stay active. I don't mean you have to go and do an exercise class 5 times a week. You just have to walk. You have to have a few steps. You need to get outside and do that stuff. We need to eat the right things to help us. Look, I can't fucking talk. I clearly eat way too much. I'm a fat 50, about to be 57-year-old woman. I'm aware of that. Do I eat the good things? Yeah, I do. I have a very good core diet and I eat a lot of shit on top, and my portions are too much. What I eat is pretty good for my mental health apart from that, because I do eat a really good variety of colors, of vegetables and of fruit. I do eat meat. I am a meat eater. And again, not all the time, not every day. So it's really important that we do that. Our brain needs a carbohydrate every 20 seconds. And if you're not giving it a carbohydrate every 20 seconds, by the way, nobody eats every 20 seconds. So our brain takes it from our body. And if we're only putting protein in, or if we're only concentrating on our muscles and our leanness, our body can't always transform everything properly. We need carbohydrates at a good level. We also need protein. We also need fat. All of those things help our brain and our bodies function properly. Drugs, alcohol, different things that we take are going to impact our mood, our headspace, how we are, and what that means and what that looks like. Having friends and connections with other human beings also is really important. Do you have enough people? Do you have enough support? Do you have enough friends around you? The person I'm seeing at the moment, we've been talking about that quite a lot recently. Do you have enough support around you? It's important, especially when we're getting into relationships and we're getting into things like BDSM, maybe for the first time, maybe for the last time, maybe it's something new to us. We need to check, is this okay? How does this work? And not just talk to that one person. So we need a group, a tribe of people around us. It's really important. We also need to understand when we're not okay. We need to know when we're going to have a bath, when we're going to switch off. We talk about self-care as if it's things like having your nails done or having your hair done. It isn't. Self-care is having a shower. Self-care is eating some food. Self-care is managing to get some sleep. And they're all the things that we take for granted. Let's say we've got insomnia, we don't sleep well, then our mood's really going to change. If we're working a 15-hour day and we never stop or take a break, we need to change scenery or change of pace. That's why holidays can help us. However, if you're only ever going on holiday and then you feel better for a week, and then you feel really bad. You need to work out how to bring some holiday into every day a little bit as well. We need to achieve things in order to feel good. Do something you're good at and achieve something. I don't care if it's fucking macrame. I don't care if it's Meccano. I don't care if it's walking the dog. It doesn't matter what it is. Do something you enjoy and say, yeah, I've done this. This is really good. Aren't I good at this? And it boosts our self-esteem. Trying to understand who you are also really boosts your self-esteem. That makes a real difference. If you do things that are true to your values. And our values are really important. And a lot of us live according to other people's values, work, everything else as well. I better not leave at 5 because people will look at me like I'm a bit of a, oh yeah, no, I better not. No, you want to leave at 5, leave at 5. As long as you've got your job done, leave at 5. It's really important. So we need to think about how we think as well. It's really important. And our mindset is really important in that as well. So what we need as well is more of a flexible, open mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And when people come in to see a therapist or trying to change their mind, if they've got a fixed mindset, it's really difficult to try and work with. So what I mean by a fixed mindset is when we turn around and we say things like, well, I can't do it. Pathetic. Fuck, I can't do it. It's very fixed. Instead, what we could be saying, which is much harder, and I appreciate that, is, well, I don't know how to do it. I don't know if I can do it. Can I watch a YouTube video? Can I talk about it? Because when you've got a fixed mindset, your internal monologue is one of judge, failure, nothing else. There's no compassion. Whereas if you've got more of a flexible and a growth mindset, it's more about curiosity. What can I do here? What can I do from this? How can I learn this? What's the difference? What do I want from this? And that's what makes a real difference. So what can you do to change your head and your headspace? Number one, you've got to work out what sort of mindset you have. Who are you? Can't used to mean capable and not trying when I was an outdoor instructor. Now, if I asked you all right now, can you stand up? Clearly, disabilities and other things aside, I'm not being ridiculous here. If you are somebody who can, it's not hard to stand up. You might ache a bit or whatever. It's not that you can. I think often we have to change the word to won't, and then we have to ask why. Why can't you? What does that mean? What's stopping you? Why don't you want to? And then we start to own our own behavior in that moment. So we need to hear our fixed mindset voice. What's happening? Well, you can't do it. That'd be pathetic. So you need to say, oh, okay, interesting. I have got that sort of thing going on in my head. Okay. Can I talk to you? We need to have a discussion with ourselves. If you hear something and you're being told off for something and it's not okay, you can't do this, you're useless at this, you're not capable. Whoa, if somebody actually spoke to you like that, you'd be really cross with them. Look, it doesn't, I don't care how much into humiliation you are. When we're not in that situation, if somebody tells you you're a piece of shit, you either believe it or you don't. And the problem is, again, as Eleanor Roosevelt said many years ago, is no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So we need to work out what our voices are telling us and what they mean. So we need to start to think differently. I can't are 2 of my most commonly spoken words. Do you think you could change that? Cormint cream? Do you think you could say something else instead? Instead of saying, I can't. Okay. Is that actually true? Well, is it a fact? Well, I don't know how to. I mean, I haven't learned it yet. I'm not sure. It's not an absolute fact. Clearly, it's a maybe. I just don't know how to yet. It's really different. So even if you understand it's a reflex, it's catching the reflex as soon as you've said it. So as soon as you catch that reflex, you can then turn around and start to have a different question. And that can be really helpful as well, because you need to recognize, which is the second step, that there is a choice. Even if it's a reflex, you catch the reflex. If it was your child or somebody you were teaching to do something, let's say you were teaching someone how to tie someone else and say, no, can't do that. No. Take the rope with your right hand, feed it through, feed it under, and oh my God, I can. Oh my God, I can. Woo! And it really is about that. I mean, I think Opal Fruit is happy because I mentioned rope. And teaching, tying Opal Fruit loves teaching rope, and he teaches rope often. So it's really important. So we need to recognize that we drop into that as a reflex. Then we need to question the reflex that we're actually doing in that moment in time. How do I see that? Is that an I can't? So then we need to have a go at it and say, well, I can't. It's an absolute. Yeah, it really is an absolute. Cosmopolite, having an accountability partner can be really helpful with that too when we do negative self-talk. It can be, and I think that's really brilliant. And don't forget, you can make your own brilliant accountability partner as well, in and of yourself. What if that person isn't available? You can even say, what would they say to me? A lot from what I'm aware when I'm working with my clients is my voice takes over some of the negative voices in their head. What would Deb say? What would Deb do? What would Deb answer to this? And you can turn and say, oh no, that's no, I can't do that. But oh, Deb will say this. Now, it's not really my voice, it's their voice, because they've started to learn how to do that. And as Anna says, your first thought is conditioned. What you do next is who you are or who you want to be. That's the point. So we all have conditioning to say I can or I can't, or I will or I won't. And we can question it and we can say, look, even if I don't want to today, there's a possibility I might want to tomorrow. That's good enough. It makes a real difference. I use I don't want to or I don't know how because I haven't tried. And I don't know that I can't. That is something I did with my children to give them to try before giving up. And it's really good. It's really good. I really agree with that, Valkyrie. Jeff says, I recently found out that fixed mindset relates to kindness too. People who simply say, believe you're either born kind or not, are basically not as kind as people who think you can choose to grow it. It's really important to learn that everything is a choice. And actually, I think niceness and kindness, come on, you can do it. Actually, can be really toxic. There is toxic kindness, there is toxic niceness, and it is not pleasant. It's a really lovely buzz when a client says, I thought to myself, what would Cara say? Yes, because what you're doing is you're replacing the parental voices that they have in their head in a more positive way. So, and sometimes I'll encourage that. Think about this. I'm challenging you. What would I say? Okay, I've got that right. What would you say? So maybe you're not sure, but maybe I could learn how to do this, which is more of a growth mindset rather than the I can't in that moment as well. It makes a difference. Even if you face criticism, well, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Listen, it might not be your fault. And what can I do differently? What's the other option here? What can I do? It makes a difference. And then you need to look at that growth mindset and start to choose that sometimes on the things that are easier. That's not easy to do. It's still, we have to make that slight change. It used to be many years ago in the 1980s, we used to have books like Think, Act, Believe, Become. I don't know if you remember those sort of things, if any of you are old enough. It's changing those words. So the way we think, the way we act is what we become. So we need to look at the way we think. However, for me nowadays, that isn't deep enough because actually people are like houses. If you change your thought pattern, it's like changing the soft furnishings, putting a new paint on the wall or changing things. That's really helpful. That can help you in a certain way. So a growth mindset can really help you with that. That's great. You can question your thought process and you can change the way your house looks. However, if you then start to believe that you're not okay on some level, or you have that belief coming in, it's really hard to change that thought mindset. So the belief then becomes, do I need an extension on this house? It's a little bit more serious, or is there a really serious case of damp or a huge crack? And no matter how many times I paint it or wallpaper it over, I'm not growing here, it's not changing. And what we then know is because that's based on feelings, and the feelings are the foundations. If you feel you're not okay as a human being, we need to do some work on that, whether it's in therapy or something else as well. We can change our thought patterns, but if you fundamentally, fundamentals, believe that you are not okay, then it doesn't matter what you do with your thoughts. It doesn't matter what you do with your behavior. Although you can create a behavioral change over 3 months, it's not 2 weeks. Frank, completely inappropriate. Why? I don't understand why you're asking. Yes and no, it really varies. Please don't talk to anyone. We're talking about growth mindset. If you'd like to ask a question about that, please do. So it's all about making sure that we understand who we are and what that works. Now, psychologists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, we all use different things. And we need quite a practical view on all of this. And there are loads of ways we can do it. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one. Changing the way we think can be really handy. Observation is really important when it comes to science. Like, observe yourself. How am I doing here? What does this mean? Is this helpful to me as a human being? Is one of my favorite phrases. If I do this, will this enhance my life? And I don't mean within the normal parameters of what your mum said. Will this enhance my life? Would my neighbour agree with that? Would Deb agree with that? Would Uncle Robert agree with that? It's expand your spectrum and start to have a look at that, because it does make a fucking big difference. So we need to really make sure that that's there. The next step is to not judge yourself harshly for failure, which can call for a lot of unlearning. Look, we all judge, and judging is a very important part of life because it tells us something that's going on. What you do with a judgment is then where we go wrong. So, and it's very much based on shame. And shame is that feeling of being inherently flawed, not okay, not present. And it means that we are not okay as a person versus the actions that we do. Either I am choosing or my script is. And I'm a real script fan, because transactional analysis and other forms of psychotherapy and psychology talk about script. So the script is the principle of you set yourself up between the ages of 0 and 5 to decide how your life is going to be. And then what you do is you go through your life trying to find the way to prove that that's right, or that, see, it's okay. See, I told you that would happen. When people self-sabotage, they're proving their script. See, I knew it would happen. Well, if you'd have acted differently, it probably wouldn't have happened. You create your script to fix you. You create your behavior and other things in order to fit your script. That's a very young age to define your role. It absolutely is. However, all the research in it proves to around those sort of ages, 0 till 5. Huge decisions we make on the things that are happening around us, because it's also the time when we're learning so much and we work out how to fit into our family and what that means. So we can have smaller scripts around that says this is the way I am. And it's so soul destroying. When somebody comes in to see me, what we're undoing basically is their script, this inner tale, this inner narrative that says this is the way I am. This is my book. This is how it is. So we need to undo script and make different choices. Who do I want to be like? What sort of choice would they make? What difference would it make if I were to do that slightly differently? Would that be good for me? So we might understand that it's circumstance, and therefore we have to act in a certain circumstance. We might have been taught that way. We have to understand maybe that it's nature. What if it's something in me that is my nature? However, what we know even from genetics, epigenetics, and scripting that happens transgenerationally or over the time, what we know is that people can still change it in the here and now. Just because you're born that way doesn't mean it is that way. It doesn't. So if you have, for example, somebody has the brain pattern or the predisposition to be a murderer, really, or a serial killer, something really serious, it doesn't mean they're going to be if their environment is loving or nurturing enough. And that makes a real difference. So that's that's something we should really think about. So we need to use different techniques to help different people at different times. So it could be that we do some kind of cognitive restructuring, and that can be really great. As I say, that's like the soft furnishings. It might be that we question or analyze, why is it you're doing that? What does it mean to you? How can you help yourself? It could be that we have to do some exposure therapy. I'm going to go wrong. I mean, the amount of times I've asked clients to say they're really scared of what's going to happen, and if they say no, or they're not going to be accepted in some way. So to change our mindset, we've got to learn to be okay with saying no, which means some kind of exposure therapy in some way, shape, or form. I want you to go out 3 times this week, and I want you to say no to something. What do you mean? Well, just say no. Well, can I have an explanation? Yeah, if you really want to, but you could just say no. I mean, don't do anything that's going to threaten your life, somebody else's, or ruin a relationship or anything else. So do something within reason. But let's say somebody says, can you just do this for me? No, I'm really sorry. You don't even have to explain. A no is a full sentence. It's good enough, especially when it comes to BDSM and especially when it comes to sex. No is a full sentence. You are what your environment is. I disagree with that. I think you can be whoever you want to be. Your environment has helped shape you, but you can go against it. Your environment will create certain circumstances if what's potentially there is then allowed to grow. So you still have...
But your idea of just simply saying no doesn't work in so many situations.
Yeah, no.
The other person is just going to say, what do you mean no?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not comfortable with just a no, you add, no, I really can't. I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I can't, because it's okay to have a reason as well. And sometimes socially, that's much more acceptable. And I promise you I was going to come on to that. So I completely agree. And of course, don't do it in the wrong circumstances. Actually, also to think about this as well, sometimes it's really good if you're saying no to a friend to turn and say, I've been set this by my therapist. I've got a task I've got to do this week. So I'm going to say no 3 times. If you let the person know, that can help as well. That makes a real difference. Jeff, choose short-term discomfort over long-term resentment, and even long-term discomfort if we know what's doing. Look, I'm not saying any of this is easy. Like you say, Joey, it's not. And I often say to people when they come into therapy, if they want to change their mindset and change how they are in their headspace, we might have to have some very uncomfortable conversations with people that are around us, because we've created an environment in which some very unhealthy friendships and some unhealthy love is happening. Your loving home will make you change the way you are born. Not for everybody all the time. Again, Frank, sorry, disagreeing with you quite a lot tonight. I apologize. A loving home can make a difference, but define loving. Loving can be overprotective. Loving can stop growth. Loving can stop risk. And we all need to take risks when we're kids, and we need to grow. We need love, consequence, and understanding our part in it, that we can change. Cinders disagrees. My family homes were filled with abuse of all forms, and actually love can be too excessive. Love can be squishing and containing. So yeah, I think that's harder as well. Mindfulness is the thing of the moment. We're all into mindfulness. So Debbie, I grew up in an enmeshed home. Sometimes love can be too much. It can be very, it's like, here, baby, let me change your apron for you. Like, and let me put your serviette in case you get egg on you. The guy's 21 and he's about to go in for his fucking army recruitment. They're like, you don't need to tuck his fucking neck. You don't. So we can be too smothering. Oh, quick, jump into bed. Thunder, you're frightened of thunder. That can be really unhealthy as well. So again, it's about a balance. Mindfulness is one of the flavors of the moment. It's all about being aware of your situation and where you are. However, I would also argue that mindfulness isn't always best for all people. Sometimes we need mentalization and different tools. So mindfulness is really where. So let me just answer these. Yeah, Mother Dearest was a tad overbearing. Yes, she'd flipped from insulting and abusing me to telling me that I was the best thing that ever happened to her. Yes, and you know what? We cut. So again, goes back to what I was even saying before. Consistency really matters. Valkyrie, an example is a pair of twins with an alcoholic and abusive father. One grows up to be an alcoholic, the other won't touch a drop. Same environment, different outcomes. And honestly, you can almost guarantee with twins or with kids, if you have an alcoholic parent, the primary relationship is with alcohol. And then what happens is one child just agrees that that's the way to be, and one child goes to the opposite and is actually quite perfectionist, works really hard and goes all out never to be that. Both aren't necessarily healthy. There's a balance to become into the middle somewhere. Jeff, short-term discomfort can feel brutal to be avoided at larger costs. I agree. However, it is the way through. The problem, I was talking about this 2 weeks ago. The problem is when we use something to make us feel better, let's say that's self-harm, let's say that's depression. If we develop something, it's because we're avoiding pain. And you have to learn to go through pain and live in pain and manage pain. It's like we're going on a bear hunt. You can't go under it, you can't go over it, you've got to go through it. However, you need the support to go through it. You need to have a better system around you in order to go through it. And friendships and family can help that. They can be the fucking cause of it as well. Agree, it really works and can be a big help if you be open and say, I struggle with saying no, and therapists and me are working on this. So I'm saying no because when I opened up to those, I felt I could make a really big difference fundamentally, change some relationships. Couldn't fix all, nope. But I could fix friends in a way. Love that book. Yeah, me too. It's so cute. It's one of my favorites. And I think it really is about mental health. Run away from the bear, run away from the cave. Got to go back through it. So I think we really have to look at how people's behavior actually keeps them in a very negative headspace and makes a difference. Also, I think we can exaggerate. We're going on a bear hunt. It's a kid's book. I wrote about it quite a long time ago as well. It's a kid's book. Pain is about going through it. Can't go over it, you can't go under it. And if you keep trying to do that in life, that pain will come back to bite you because it's like a Pandora's box. We just keep sitting on it. We just keep sitting on it. We have to learn to go through it. Oh, thank you. By Michael Rosen. So I think we've got to be aware of our headspaces, aware of the impact that that has. And it isn't easy for everybody. It's such a big impact for us. And sometimes family can make it worse and family can make it better. But there are lots of little tools that we can use. So for example, I've spoken about it before, the drama triangle is a really good tool to use. If you don't know what the drama triangle is, it's a triangle. It's an awareness of a childlike space that we're on, where we've got victim, persecutor, and rescuer. So a lot of the time, when we're in a negative headspace, we're in a childlike headspace. It's stuff from the old that we've teleported into today. We haven't gone back, we've brought it into our today. So that's a really important way to see it as well. A lot of people say, I've gone back. I've gone backwards. I'm back where I was when I was 5. No, you've brought 5 into 56. That's the other thing you have to think about. Because if you think you've done it, we can look at how and why have you done that as well. That can make a difference. Not always. These things aren't easy. Oh, thank you, Jerry. Really kind of you. Thanks. So it's really important to understand I've teleported that in today. Why? Why do I need to be 5? What's going on for me here? How will this help me as a human being? And when we're on the drama triangle, we're very much in a childlike space. So if we're a victim, we use words like everybody always and nobody ever, it's not fair, the whole world's against me, I'm not managing, it's not okay, I can't do this. So we become quite young and incapable. Now, if we're on as a victim, we kind of need a persecutor or a rescuer. And the story I've always given, it's the easiest one to think about, is I'm on my way home from work. I've worked in London, been really busy. It's bloody midnight. I'm already thinking, I bet no cunt's emptied the dishwasher at home. I know I'm thinking that, or no one's cleaned the hob, or somebody hasn't done anything that I think they should do. I walk in, I go straight to the dishwasher. I'm looking for shit. I'm already feeling like a victim. I'm really tired. It's not fair. Why should I empty the dishwasher? Why should it be my job? They've all fucking had the dinner. I haven't even had dinner. So I'm using very victim-like behavior. I open the dishwasher. I probably break the hinges because I open it that violently. And then somebody might come in and say, hi, did you have a nice day? Oh, they don't know I'm on the drama triangle. Come in. I really want you to play. So they're about to walk in and slip on the ice and come straight in. I now jump to persecutor. It would have been fucking better if you'd have emptied the dishwasher. Why didn't you? For fuck's sake. It's clearly been dry for hours. I've been working really hard. Whoa, says they. They are now a victim. So as they're a victim, that's really complex as well. I'm persecuting them, which makes them a victim. If they want to get off, they just need to say, I'm not playing. If you want the dishwasher emptied, empty it. I'm quite happy to do it, or I will do it in the morning, and they can walk away. No, we don't do that. Don't fucking talk to me like that. I've been really working hard all day. I've just managed. And then they become a victim as well, and then they might persecute me, or they might rescue me. All right, sorry, I'll fucking help you. Oh, I don't want your help now. It's too late. So help is all about help. These are the worst things for help. You know when you say, I can't do this, and someone just snatches it out of your hand and does it and gives it back to you. Or you know when you go to open a jam jar and you can't quite open it, and somebody just takes it out of your hand and give it back. You've just described my next door neighbours. Exactly. And probably every argument you've ever had in your life. I'm trying to open this can of Coke and I can't do it. Somebody takes it out of my hand and does it. They've just disempowered me. I don't say thank you when they give it back. If I want it opened, I need to say, please, could you help me open this? That's off the drama triangle. To take it out of my hands is on the drama triangle. And it's just a really bad mindset to be in. It's a really bad headspace. If we're going to go into play, we often think that play changes our headspace. And that can be very true because it changes our chemicals. But you have to be in the right frame of mind in order to go into play and in order to have communication around poly as well. So that really matters as well. What sort of mood are you in? The relationship itself is foreplay. The things that you do are foreplay. Talking to someone, setting someone up. I was talking to a couple this morning who have been poly, who have had some mistakes happen in their relationships and done some things that they both regret. It's all about, if you just text, if you did this, just to build things up, we can also help change someone's headspace. The rescue in the drama triangle reminds me of white knight syndrome. Yes. But however, they're permanently in that. So the drama triangle, we might slip between all three. Often the white knight is somebody who always believes that that's the way to be liked. Often the nice guy, often the person who's trying to do something, and they will always put me in a very bad headspace because it's about them and not about me. They're not trying to help really. They're just doing it because it makes them look better. So headspace really matters when it comes to playing. And being able to change your headspace really matters when it comes to playing. What are your favorite things when it comes to headspace and the things that you do? What sort of things do you use that you think could help anyone else here? What works for you? I'm really interested to see what people say. I mean, whether you type or not, it's up to you. But I'm just curious, because how to look after our mental health is fundamental. We clean our teeth, hopefully. We have a shower, we do different things, and we very rarely do something that's really good for our mind. I did talk earlier about mindfulness being really popular. It's the thing of the day, which is about staying present. But for some people, mindfulness can actually hurt us, especially if we have trauma. So mentalization can be better. Do people know what mentalization is? Have you heard that phrase before, or ever been taught it, or to use it? It's really very good for someone else rather than for you. So mentalization is where you sort of look away. Somebody is really struggling with something, like a teen or your sub or your dom or your friend, whoever, your metamor, your partners, when we turn around and say, I don't know, that's really hard. I don't know, if I've been in that situation, I've maybe done this or I've done that, or these sort of things have helped. And then you catch your eye at the end. So what you're doing is you're throwing balls into the air, 2 or 3, not too many. And then they turn around and they say, and you say, I don't know, but and then you bring it back. So mentalization is a really simple trick to use for people, especially around teens, of, I don't know, I suppose for me, I've tried this and that and I've done that. And then you catch their eye and just walk away. So you give them an idea, but you don't tell them what to do by throwing those balls in the air. Cinders, crafts, knitting, reading, journaling, walks, gardening, they're my usual go-to options after work and I need to unwind. Absolutely. Shaking it out like a dog. We really know that burnout comes from adrenaline and different things. So if you can go for a walk, if you can really help yourself in that way, that really makes a huge difference to change your mindset as well. When we talk about things like crafts, knitting, what we're talking about is opposable thumbs. We know that when we use opposable thumbs, we use a lot of aspects of our brain in any one moment, and it takes a lot of concentration, which helps other parts of our brain to switch off. So if we draw, I mean, if we go back to Victorian times, I've mentioned this before, ladies that knitted and did music and all those sorts of things, they were helped, they were calmer because of this. It really helped. So crafts are really good for us. Plus it uses a different part of our brain and we feel better for it often. Singing does the same. Singing is one of the only things that, well, unless you smoke cannabis or take cannabis, that opens up your endocannabinoid system, and singing is really positive. It changes parts of you that are amazing and wonderful. So singing is also highly recommended. Journaling can really help for us to walk through. Gardening has actually been proven as a helpful addition to cure depression or to help with depression. I hate the word cure particularly. That can really make a difference. There's something about getting your hands in the dirt and doing something. Jerry says, I have a basic respect for myself and awareness that I like myself. I'm a good person, a nice person, and that can help me get through some shit times. It's so important, isn't it? And it's, how did you develop that basic respect, Jerry? Was it something you were born with and had, or is it something you've had to work on? And if so, how did you get it? I think that's important too.
It's something that I've gained since I outed myself and joined FetLife and started meeting people I could be honest with. Right. So what we were talking about earlier was values. When we are true to our values, we are more likely to have a better self-esteem. And if let's say, for example, we are actually kinkier than we think, or we really like this stuff, but we've been suppressing it for years, we'll have a less respect for ourselves and a less awareness. Whereas if we really go into it and bring ourselves out of it, we can feel a shit ton better. I go for walks, says Valkyrie. I have a process where I take something that is bothering and I analyze and dissect it, and I let it go and visualize throwing it up and letting it get carried away by the wind. So whether you're conscious of that or not, Valkyrie, what you're doing there for yourself is something called neuro-linguistic programming, whereby we visualize things and we start to throw them away. I teach some of the kids I work with in sports to put positive things in by doing something. You'll often see my kids in cheer doing this by the side of their clothes as they're about to do a tumble routine, like a round off back handspring, full twist or something. They're often doing it. And when I do that, my whole stomach churns. It's really interesting. But neuro-linguistic programming will also encourage for you to make something pixelated, change it, scrunch it up, throw it away, make it go, tie it to a balloon, visualization in the air. And NLP does a lot of that. So naturally you're doing something there. Does killing off plants count as gardening?
maybe. Cinders, this has been growing herbs and fruits. Yes, and the entire process is very healing. Absolutely. Cool Mint Cream says the space for play will often be established early in a day, a good day we've had together, a lot like whatever might come before and build up to a vanilla romantic encounter. Yes, absolutely. Does playing an instrument work or just singing? Actually, singing itself, it's all about using your vocal cords. However, playing an instrument, opposable thumbs in its own way, depending on what you're playing and what you're doing. Wind, also, if you're playing a wind instrument, a brass instrument, anything that takes breath, is also about deeper breathing, breath control, which also makes us feel better and changes our brain. And the focus and concentration of making music can really help. I moved to somewhere with a yard to have a garden, and I absolutely overdid it. But it's literally keeping me sane to go out there and pet the plants, prune them, compliment them. Talking to your plants is very important. I talked to my therapist about it, and that's part of the reason it's so helpful, because not only am I outside, but it's a near future goal in having grown food, and a far future goal as a skill I want to learn and bring into a future dynamic. That sounds really beautiful. Singing is all about breathing. That's what really helps, I think. Yep. So how we hold the diaphragm, how we breathe, and what we do. However, singing itself is also where the energy changes, and that's also to do with polyvagal vagal nerve theory as well. Cat needs to go. Bye-bye. Kitten, instruments do help. I also go to drumming circle. That's some friends of mine, and it's excellent. A drumming circle is really good for you. Why? Percussion really matters. When you are in the womb, you are surrounded by percussion. That main percussion is the heart. Percussion makes us feel very safe and nurtured. And there's something magical when I watch drummers walking. So like some of the medieval festivals I go to, especially if there's a large group where you're watching it, you're like, fuck, that's as sexy as hell. And it's so cool for your brains. So percussion, that's why things like tapping can help for some people. Not everyone believes in tapping, but tapping can be really helpful for us, especially if we cross the meridian. Again, that's a little more spiritualistic. Some people don't believe in it. There is some science to back it up as well. So all these things can help change our headspace. And I think headspaces have been absolutely fucking awful over the pandemic, and people are just starting to change and get used to things. Laughing and getting him or her to laugh is always good. I mean, if I'm feeling really down, if TikTok and that sort of shit doesn't do it for me, but if I start watching babies laughing who've had a bit of paper ripped up in front of them, or anything else as well, or if you watch kittens, like animals really help us as well, puppies, kittens. That's why everybody got one over lockdown. It wasn't just about I want something to do. Drumming gets you into an alternative state of consciousness. It absolutely does. People can disappear on it. And it's a much better way to get in an altered state rather than just using drugs. That's for sure. Okay. So anyone got any further questions about Headspace? Spike Milligan always gets me out of a down if I can be bothered to watch him. I've worked with him. I've told you that, haven't I? I told you that I've worked with him. Yeah. I worked with him on a couple of things, majorly a big show once. He was a bit mad by then though, but he was cognizant sometimes for sure. So finding things that make us laugh. However, we've got to have the energy to find things that make us laugh. So it's a really good idea to have them set up on your phone, find things that you can just access really easily. There are brilliant things to do. There is a YouTube video that is a piece of music that's designed to take you out of anxiety. It's done with 2 drones, the way you watch them and where they go. So it mixes EMDR with music therapy. There are loads of things around if you want to use them to help your headspace, but you have to consciously work on it when you're not doing it. So I teach people breathing patterns. I teach people all sorts of stuff for panic attacks. And one of my favorite things is to say, every time you pick up your phone, rather than getting on your phone, put your phone down, turn around, and practice some of these things, and then look on your phone, because it's no good saying, well, it doesn't fucking work. I couldn't remember it when I needed it. Yes, it's because you haven't practiced it enough. As I say, you clean your teeth. You do something every day to help yourself. And I think you really have to be aware of friendships, lifestyles, and everything else that you do, and make sure you have time and space for them. Jeff, it does say cinders. It's excellent for meditation. It is. Any form of drum, whether it's for yourself or percussion or anything, is really good. Rhythm is good. Tit sub, I really need to make time for my hobbies. You do. You do. I spend too much time stressing about never-ending chores that I struggle to handle because of my executive function issues. One thing we know about increasing executive functioning issues is, ironically, if you make yourself more busy. If you do have hobbies and other things, it takes away the time for worry when you have to just get things done. And strangely, with executive function, that can have an impact and make a difference. So sometimes the busier you are, even if you're neurodivergent, makes a real difference. I read that it takes 3 months to reduce. I think I've said that already. So it's around 3 months and 3 days. It's around 3 months. It's bold of you to assume I regularly clean my teeth. That's why I said it earlier. Sometimes when you have therapy for 15 minutes a week, because that's how long a therapy session is for an individual, most of the time, most therapists do it that way. It is on average 1% of your waking time to help your mental health, to help you feel different. So we have to find other ways to do it as well. If you can't afford a therapist, one of the things I would also recommend is book out 50 minutes every single week and take some time to talk to yourself, no matter how mad we look, to read something, to contemplate, to try and do something slightly differently so that we feel differently. Oh, and I forgot. Minimalism is another thing that has helped me too. Granted, I'm in the process of decluttering, but having less stuff to see helps to reduce my anxiety. There is a very old phrase called tidy house, tidy mind. It's a very old phrase. However, neuroscience now backs that up. If you declutter your bedroom, you will sleep better. When, I know, Jerry, it's really boring and for other people that know me, when I had cancer, one of the things I did was utterly declutter my house. Every single drawer, every single cupboard, everything that I've got, I just got a skip and I just threw. I didn't throw everything because I'm really conscious about my environment. So I gave clothes away. I gave all my artist stuff away. Like friends took it, other therapists took it. I just decluttered completely, and it really helps us feel better. It is really handy. I can relate to minimalising clutter anxiety. It helps us feel better. If you've got a lot of shit around, it really doesn't help us. Right, in 2 weeks' time, I am covering CNC because I've been asked to. Would you like any other subject, or do you want to? What else would you like covered in relation to BDSM, poly, mental health, anything, communication skills, anything you can think of? Does anybody want anything in particular? All your subjects are great. Oh, thank you. They're asked for by you, or I can do like CNC and then an open thing. You can ask any question. It's up to you. And that's what they started out as. So if anyone doesn't have a question, that's fine. Communication skills would be great. So Harada, what do you mean? What do you mean by communication skills? I know I just mentioned it because that's a very broad topic, but so some tools for communication, helpful stuff when it comes to communicating. Is that what you mean? Or do you mean specifically within BDSM, within polyamory, ways of talking? Let me know. Tools. So communication tools. I can do that. This thread about ADHD and habits blew my mind because, yeah, if I don't have an external motivator, I will never remember to do it. Yes, I mean, I can't click on it and look and everything else as well, but it is really important. This has been fantastic. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Smile. Polycommunication would be handy. So let's do communication in general and polycoms, techniques and things to do, polycommunications. We can do that. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be doing CNC for your kinksters and polycoms for your poly, and it might be good for both sets of people. Thank you very much for your time. And I love these, as always. I'm a bit tired today, so apologies, not as buzzy as I normally am. Thank you very much.
Believe me, it doesn't show.
Thanks. I've used this seminar tonight to get my serum tidied as external motivation to switch my brain. Brilliant. Yeah, you are always amazing. Oh, thank you. People saying some really lovely things. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. I really appreciate it. I will see you in 2 weeks and we will look at CNC and communication tools and communication tools. Wonderful workshop. Thank you. All saying lovely things. Time for a wanker wave and I will see you all soon. Take care. Thank you for coming. Jerry, if I leave, you're going to have to turn it off. Thanks for the help. See you later. Bye.
Bye, lovely.
Bye.
Bye, lovely.